Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Macro Social Work Stories, where social workers are making a difference. Today, we have some guests, and we're going to allow them to tell us one fact about themselves and a brief introduction. We have Ms. Stephanie Rosado, and we also have Dr. Kratz, and they're going to talk about their journey. But before we get to their journey, we want them to talk about one fun fact and tell us what you're doing at this time. So we're going to start with Ms. Rosado.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Gary and Steve, for having me. And hi, Dr. Kratz. I'll start with, did you say start with a little bit about me first and then a fun fact? Is that what you asked me?
Yes.
Okay, a little bit about me. I am a member and former executive committee member for the Alliance of Social Workers in Sports. I'm currently pursuing my PhD in social work at the University of South Florida here in Tampa. And a fun fact about me that you wouldn't know sitting here in this virtual room is that I'm 6'2".
Oh, okay. Thank you for sharing.
Definitely true. Can't tell at all. I would have said 5'7" for sure.
Yes.
That is fun stuff. Well, Gary, I'm Stacy Kratz. I have been teaching at USC USC University of Southern California in LA for about 11 years. And I am on the executive team of the Alliance of Social Workers in Sports. It's my favorite organization in the whole world, other than yours, Steve. And and Stephanie and I come together in our love for sports social work, and it plays out every single day. A fun fact, I am one of 8 children in a family I grew up in Chicago.
Wow. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So we're talking about families and height. You really never know unless you really had opportunity to engage and connect with someone.
5'3", by the way, Gary, 5'3". You'd never know it.
Yes. So we're all equal on the virtual space, all equal, the same level.
Right.
I used to be 5'11". Now I'm 5'10".
I better measure myself, actually.
Yeah, so welcome. And you all talked about Sports Alliance. For someone who may not understand the connection between sports and social work, can someone tell us that connection?
Well, we both could. Hey, Steph, we know that so sports social work is that practice subfield of social work that promotes social justice and social change by focusing on the unique needs of athletes, their allies, and the communities where we all live. So we work, and as a sports social worker, we work at both an individual and an environmental level. And what we're doing, like so many subspecialties, all of them probably, promoting human and community well-being. It's just we use the sport and athletic arena for social change.
Yep. And I can just add a little bit to that. I guess I left this out of my intro, but as a former collegiate and professional athlete, I guess my journey into sports social work was inspired by my athletic experience and being a vulnerable athlete during that time. And so that's what kind of propelled me into sports social work, and it helps define it more on that individual level. But again, as athletes and as an individual, we are impacted by the greater systems around us, right? So our community, the society, and so there you have the social justice pieces and things like that. So even when you think about the individual and athlete and how vulnerable they are, we have to think about that grand scheme in the more macro perspective.
Yes, thank you. Because many times society may not look at athletes as vulnerable. They look at their paycheck when they want professionalism, but we know there's a lot of discussion about college athletes and the universities and how much money they make off the backs of college students in that process. And so as we look at social work and social work alliance with sports, we know that mental health on a macro and micro and macro level is a serious issue. How is Sports Alliance addressing that social justice issue of mental health?
Well, that's a layered question. Yeah.
We both want to jump in, right, Steph? We're like,
yeah.
Thanks for Gary, like really understanding that the depth of that. Sports social work is across the lifespan. So it's youth sport. It is children having areas to play, green space, knowing that space matters and place matters. It's getting into positive youth development. It's moving into grammar school and high school sport. And what are we doing? Because we know that any strong community also has strong sport programming. We know that.
Okay.
And actually, I mean, Mandela's famous quote, right? Like about we have to have sport and we have to be able to use that universal desire for sport and athleticism to propel our communities to better spaces. So we get into then the collegiate space as well, and Steph has been there, and then even in the professional space. But we're also talking about people that are just naturally, from a human point of view, using athletic capabilities, and that's at all abilities for all humans that we need that. So collegiate sport specifically, it gets in the media very much, and also professional sports, Olympics, elite athletes. And we know that athletes are a whole human. And Steph, I think that your experience and your expertise in athlete mental wellness in the collegiate and professional space, which is documented in many publications, and publications you're having coming out, and some publications that we're working on together, that you can expand on that.
Yeah, that, like Gary, the question you asked is so multi-layered and so deep, as you can see from even Stacy's response or Dr. Kratz's response. But yeah, my experience was unique, but it's not. Like, there's a lot of athletes, that suffer from mental health vulnerabilities and mental health disparities. And so when we look at this, a big piece of my role within the Alliance of Social Workers in Sports is advocacy, and letting people know, letting athletes know that mental health is a thing. It doesn't mean that you're weak or that you're not just as great as an athlete, but also letting the larger audience know that social workers have a role in the athletic arena. We are here to support and bolster not only athletes, but like Dr. Kratz said, sport as a tool for development and to promote these young people and these young professionals forward.
Yeah, I think this is a really amazing area, that the potential for growth here, and to sort of be part of the wake-up call that Stacy, you and I have been talking about what social work, where it has to be and how it has to be, is so important. How did this emerge? When did this begin to emerge? It's wonderful to know, for example, with what Simone Biles did, with what Michael Phelps has done, that here you have these amazing, the most brilliant athletes in their particular sport, admitting that they have vulnerability. So it's a great opportunity here when you have people like that open about this. But how did it begin? Did you get pushback about it? Oh, that's not social work. Or or was it easily embraced? What happened? How did this happen? It's a wonderful thing.
It's so fabulous. Oh, see the smiles Steph and I have. Steve and Gary, Jane Addams brought the play movement to America, right?
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. And so, Jane Addams, like on Halsted Street in Chicago, started the first official playground. And why was she doing that? Because little kids were fighting. And these immigrant children that didn't have the same language, but you threw them a soccer ball, and all of a sudden there was joy and peace. And so she had the wisdom to do that. Others were doing the same thing. She gets a lot of credit for it, though, right? And there's actually some articles in the sports social work arena that talk about her bringing this idea of we have to have strong sport and athletic programming within our communities if we want a strong community, because it's part of what it means to be human. So, like, we can point to that, we can also point to other work about building youth development programs that are focused in sport. Things like things even like Big Brothers Big Sisters, things like
Yeah.
organizations that have been pushing sport as the tool. And it's even international. There's a great group in Cape Town, South Africa, that is called oh my gosh,
School of Hard Knocks.
yes, School of Hard Knocks. And what
Great name.
it's a rugby program that's in 4 schools in the southern tip of Africa that uses rugby for social development. So actually, sport for social development is a big, huge global term, sport for social development. The alliance, though, when we picked up the birth of that was from 5 original members that said, we're coming together as 5 professional social workers that are building this alliance, because we know there's social workers all over the world that are in this space, but they haven't come together. Steph, the original, the OG alliance, you want to go on that?
I think, I have less experience than Dr. Kratz. She's been in the game, so to speak, longer than I have. And so she knows a little bit more. And but yeah, I think so the Alliance of Social Workers in Sports started, what was it, 8 years ago then? Yeah. We're a young organization. Young organization, started with original, with I think it was 5 or 6 original members. And so at that time, these were professionals that were already working in this space, as Dr. Kratz said, but they were constantly going through, what you were alluding to, Steve, what is that sport social work? Is that even a thing? What does that even mean? And so even now to this day, our advocacy efforts are about, putting this subspecialty of social work out there and telling people and educating people about what it is, so we can create awareness about it and how it can be used to improve lives around the globe, And so, to answer your question, your original question, do we experience some resistance, or like not even resistance, but people that don't know? Of course, every day there's people that are like, oh, that's a thing, I could do that. Yes, you can. But also to further that, there's more organizations around the world that are recognizing the value of sports social work. Just the other day, I posted on LinkedIn, the NFLPA, they are looking for an MSW to fill a position in their organization. Like the job description says MSW. So it's being recognized, and I think it's being more accepted and valued now today because of the work of those original members who spearheaded this organization.
Awesome.
Wow.
That reminds me of the USOPC. So when they were expanding from the work that came out of the task force of the Olympic Committee for Task Force on Mental Health, so they expanded the medical program to include more mental health. And those 3 positions recently that were filled, we're asking for social workers to fill those at the 3 training sites. So change, oh my heavens, at a macro level, we're just seeing it every single day. It's so exciting.
Well, it is exciting because, Stacy, you reminded me, I had forgotten the S of Jane Addams did begin, but then there was some part of the reform movement in social work that said, put recreation over there, somewhere else, public health, rather than keeping it within us or alongside both. And you're doing this is really, and going back to the roots, but it also is, what it does is it creates new opportunities for think about what social workers can be, which can be far more than perhaps people imagine. So I think this one in particular. So tell me, when you say mental health, I mean, that of course is a broad term. I mean, I know, for example, I was never a gifted athlete, but I've had friends who were in college sports, and the intensity of competition and the ways in which coaching occurs, let's face it, is not exactly empathic. So, or at least it hasn't been. So, what are the kinds of pressures or issues that emerge that lead them to want social work to work with athletes, whether it be basketball or whether it be gymnastics, whatever it might be?
Do you want me to take that that question? So what kind of, Steve, if I understood correctly, what kind of pressures emerge as far as the athlete standpoint?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I can just use myself. So this is full self-disclosure. I'm not speaking for the entirety of athletes, but just, even my own experience. Just starting from the beginning, as a minority, as a woman of color, coming into a predominantly white institution and being othered or feeling, disconnected from the team, or having, things not happen like I felt like they should have happened because I was a little bit different. And so when we talk about, social justice and things like that, that comes into play a lot for minority athletes, that culture shock, so to speak, that they experience when they go to a predominantly white institution. Also the social injustices, but also the pressure to play. Like you said, sports is a business. It's all about money. I get this scholarship and I have to make this college or organization some money. So the pressure to perform is there, let alone if I get injured and now I can't play. Now I'm thinking about my scholarship. Now I'm thinking, how am I going to support myself or my family, in the future? When we talk about women athletes, women may have families in college or, even at the professional level. So are we thinking about those multiple roles that women and even males can have at this professional level, let alone having to perform on a national stage? When we talk about the media and the pressure the media puts to be this perfect person, I mean, the list can go. I can keep naming things, but those are just some of a few things and a few vulnerabilities that can really impact athlete mental health.
And let's not forget that a lot of the discussions seems to tend to, like, the whole population of professional and student athletes has no history with mental illness. And we know that that's not true. So imagine coming into this circle and the pressures that Steph is talking about, and then having to deal and get the proper treatment that you need in a stigmatized environment where you're encouraged to keep quiet, and that it's only about sport performance, how you're performing. You can imagine how that is absolutely crushing for so many athletes. But the other piece of that too is thinking about, if in social work, we're always talking about social determinants of health, right? It's that emerging, right? And so if we're talking about social determinants of health, then we're talking about building strong communities, which we use the data and the social science research to show that sport programming is necessary for healthy environments. Then we're going to have these collegiate, high school, collegiate, and professional athletes that are more aware, and that we actually have proof that that's emerging, that it is being stigmatized. So,
and
so
if
as
we
look at
even
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. And I was going to say, even if we look at the issues that are occurring in our society today, they are reflected in athletics. When we talk about opioids, when we talk about athletes getting hurt, that's reflected. The issues that athletes are having are also reflected in the larger society. So when athletes get injured, they get prescribed this medication so they can be in less pain, and it can lead to addiction and other things with pain medications, and we see that in society on a larger scale. So I just want to highlight that the athletes, they're not invincible. They're subjected to the same risk factors as the general population. They're human.
So as we look at awareness of the lived experience of our athletes, I remember recently during the national championship, the women's basketball team and the men's basketball team, they were in I think the same stadium, but the women's area their weight room may have been a couple of dumbbells, but the gentleman's side was a whole side full of extravagant equipment. And so the inequities that women experience as a result of the NCAA and other entities in that process. So like you're saying, many times we can look at sports and we can see how it's reflecting upon the inequities in our society, gender, as well as ethnicity. When you have athletes of certain ethnic groups who are dominant on the different teams, and let's say that they get injured, like you stated, what happens next? And so we've seen a shift with Deion Sanders going to a historically Black college university. And students are looking at identity, care, safe environments. And it's going to be like a shift because once athletes from HBCUs begin to receive coverage like other schools, resources, opportunities, and being able to be drafted professionally, and is well known, there may be a shift. But we know that thank you for bringing up the point that many times the athletes, the whole system reflects what goes in a society, like a microcosm of what we see in our society in that process.
Absolutely. And even with that, Gary, it makes me just think of our whole profession of social work, right? And we're charged with warriorship for social justice, right? And we see social injustices play out in this arena in the same way, like Steph was saying. The other thing I wanted to point out is that we're all athletes. I believe that. And that we all have, no matter what our abilities are and our strengths and where we come from, we all belong in this space. So we want to make sure that the discussion is about all of our society and broader than collegiate and professional sports. And we can do that by pushing this idea that these that we live in produce these people, right? And that social work helps frame the narrative.
That's great. I want to go back to the five of you sitting down in a room somewhere saying we have to do this. What was it? Because you were ahead of the game. Not that it wasn't here, not that the issues weren't here, but it always takes a few people to look and suddenly see an issue's been there all along. Let's look at it in a new way. What was it that led you personally to say, hey, this is an issue, or someone else in the five of you who said social work can make a difference here? What's the story that happened that led to the five of you coming together, or the five stories? I mean, that's what you can tell all five, but
yeah. So I didn't come into that story until many members were already part of the Alliance of Social Workers in Sports. But what I look to often, and how I receive mentorship, is from the first one of the first members, Dr. Matt Moore. And he's a professor at Ball State, and he uses his vision of strong communities to impact. And what happened was what I know of his story, and Steph, you fill in the blanks, was as a coach, he's a tennis coach, as a parent, as an athlete himself, and then as a social work professor, you can't disentangle the need for social work because you're always in it. You can't compartmentalize your social worker soul, right? When you're it just doesn't go away. So I know that's what catapulted him, and he worked with four others that were in this academic arena, that were professors of social work and then also working in athletics professionally, that said, well, let's call ourselves something. And then also, how do we infuse what we know about sport and society into social work programs so that we can build? And then that was Matt Moore and Dr. Ginger Gamalt from Lamar University, who wrote the very first textbook that's called Sports Social Work.
Okay.
And so that was the impetus for organizing. What else
And-
did I miss?
And then, so I wasn't a part of that original, what we call the OGs of sports social work. I wasn't a part of that. However, like Dr. Kratz, she got into it through her mentorship and connection to Dr. Moore. I pursued my MSW at University of Southern California. For one of my first classes was with Dr. Stacy Kratz.
There you are.
I told her my interest. I'm like, I used to be an athlete. And she's like, oh my God, have you heard of this? And it just, have you heard of sports social work? And it kind of just took off from there. And so I've been a part of the Alliance of Social Workers in Sports since 2018 and have been an executive committee member. Just finished my third year. So from 2018-19 to the end of this past December, I have been on the executive committee for their leadership team. So that's kind of what catapulted me. It was purely through mentorship, talking, getting involved, and trying to pave a way for myself.
Interesting.
Wonderful.
And Steph keeps saying that she's not on the executive board, but she is closely linked. So we're not letting you go, Steph. How I got into sports social work. So as an athlete, we're all athletes. I was also working with the refugee task force of the state of Florida, and I did volunteer work with that. And we had a speaker that came that was talking about refugee sport. I'm like, what the heck is refugee? I didn't know what it was. I was like, I don't know about this, but there's a refugee Olympic team. And the members of the refugee Olympic team were looking for college placements in the United States. And so I was like, well, I work at USC. Let me talk to people. I don't know. But it was intriguing enough for me to say, we're all athletes. I think of, it touched my soul as well, because I'm a parent of a D1 athlete and a parent of other kids played at other schools. And I said, wow, okay, so who are these people working in this space? And so you keep asking questions, and then you meet people. And then, it's all colliding at the same time. And here's Steph in my policy class at USC. And one of the assignments was to write an op-ed, right? Kind of a common thing. And Steph wrote an op-ed, and she got it published in the Fort Wayne paper, right?
Fort Wayne Journal Gazette, yeah.
Fort Wayne Journal Gazette. And so then we took it to a conference and did a poster presentation for that. And, that's really the power of making sure that all the universities know about this fast-growing subspecialty and to infuse it into the curriculum at every level.
Did you no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just thinking. You can tell I'm excited. The very
first time for everything, Steph. First time for everything.
There is a first time for everything, including the Sports Social Work Journal Volume 1 drops next week. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And in there is an article written by Dr. Sam Bates and myself that talks about infusing sports social work, integrating it into the entire curriculum.
What kind of response, if I think of, what about how do I would think students would respond well, if not, although at first they might be shocked, because many of them, in my experience, I could be wrong, but many of them don't think of themselves as athletes at all. And so there's a wall of, in some cases, a defensive wall saying, oh, I can't do that. I'm uncoordinated. I'm not really good at sports. So what kind of response have you gotten from students? And how do you break through to the people who historically have never been athletes in social work?
I can start off with that. Sport, I would start off by telling a student or someone like that, even an adult, sport is so much than athleticism. Like Stacy was alluding to earlier, it's about building camaraderie. It's about connection with other people. It's about transferable skills. So maybe you're not the best shooter or I don't know, kicker on a team or whatever the case may be, but you might be the best cheerleader. You might be the best teammate. You might be the best defensive person, and so all those skills are transferable to different realms of our lives. And so even when you talk about communicating in a team, we do that on the daily as professionals. So I think if it was someone that was steered away from sports or athletic endeavors, that would be my response to them, or how I would encourage them, but also the health benefits. Okay, you might not be the best, but let's go get this running just to get our heart pumping a little bit. When we talk about social determinants of health and obesity and things of that nature. So that would be my response.
Yes.
Thank you. That's great.
Yes, I agree. I like how you are framing what an athlete is as a whole person, and that we all are athletes, but because of the skills and community that we stand in need of, and more than ever, we need community due to our current pandemic, and so we see the benefits of sports and community and advocacy. All those are ingredients for change. In order for advocacy to move forward, you have to have a community behind it for that process to make it sustainable as we move forward in that process. Yes. And so as we wrap things up, let's say that a social worker who's emerging, who desires to have impact. We know that sports alliances is one area. How would you encourage that social worker to go into an uncharted area where they may not have a lot of support?
I know. I'm thinking one thing I know you're going to say, Steph.
Go ahead. I'll piggyback off you.
Well, I love social media. I really do. And I love LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is all about, I promise I'm not on their marketing department. LinkedIn is about networking, right? And I think that the most important thing I would say to social workers that want to get into this field is to really play up networking, because so many people don't know about us. And that means joining the Alliance of Social Workers of Sports, of course, because you want to have first access and be part of those discussions at every level. And then reaching out all the time. As a matter of fact, Laureus, just an example of what I've done. Laureus USA. So Laureus is a global player in sport for development. Very, very large budget, and they're moving mountains. They're a great organization. And they just hired a brand new executive director for USA. And of course, I saw this pop up on LinkedIn, keeping ahead of the pulse. Of course, I'm going to send her a message and say, hey, you're moving into this role. We actually have been involved with programs that you fund at the global level, and including School of Hard Knocks. And we want to make sure you know all about ASWIS and what sports social workers can do for building strong communities, for example. So get connected.
Yeah.
Great. That's great.
Yeah. And, I would just piggyback off that and second that, to say network, get connected, and get involved. It's more than just getting connected. That's like the first step. Connect with people, get to know people and what they're doing. But for me, joining the Alliance of Social Workers in sports and saying, hey, I want to help. How can I help? What committee can I join? How can I get some experience? Who can I talk to? How can I utilize my skill set or the things that I bring to the table to propel the subspecialty of sports social work forward? So get connected and get involved.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, the other thing, Stacy, you said once to me at an aside is that the people who are doing this work are actually paid better than a lot of more traditional social work jobs, which I think is a big deal.
Yeah, we definitely need more research on that, like to do some more surveys. But what we're seeing is these the scale is higher. We're in a lot of private places that are more corporate based, not for that are for-profit institutions, and it's certainly looking like those positions are higher paid, and we're concerned about that because social workers in general are not paid enough. And that value is got to be expanded upon. And Steve, I know you're doing the work on that, and that's
Yeah, the value of the work on both sides, nonprofit and for-profit, is valuable. So across the board, social workers need, that equity and equality.
Yeah,
beautifully put.
You know what, like we were saying earlier, job opportunities are really expanding. It's taking a lot of talking to people about why in job descriptions you need to include social workers, LCSWs, and actually calling people on it. Like, for instance, like Reebok has a great program that's called Box Kids, and it's about it's a train the trainer type model. And we want to make sure that how we train our coaches is actually reflective of social work values and our philosophies about strong individuals and communities. So we're collaborating with organizations like that and looking for opportunities to expand the job opportunities and the field placements, of course.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up here, we always want both of you to have the last word before Gary takes us home. But we like both of you to, whatever your last word is, it's been incredibly exciting and enlightening. I think our listeners are really going to learn an enormous amount, both not only about this, but what they themselves can do. But we'd like both of you to have the last word.
Yes. You want me to go first? I guess if I have to give my parting words, I would first want to say thank you to Steve and Gary for having me and inviting me to the show. But also, if you're interested in sports social work, just reach out, whether it's to me, to the Alliance. I'm here to help. I can, provide my contact information, connect with me on LinkedIn. The first step in anything is to learn about it and to know about it. You can't make any decisions or take any action without knowing about something. So if you just want to learn about it and get more information, please do reach out, Stephanie Rosado, and I'm on LinkedIn, and I'll feel free to ask me for my contact information. I'm like an open book.
And it's beautiful because Stephanie just makes herself available. She just gives of herself all the time. So that is absolutely true what Stephanie said. I guess my parting word would be, we need you. We need you. So social workers, get out there, be part of the discussion, and be the best you can be, and show up. Just show up.
Beautiful.
Yes, we thank you for the time we spent on today, learning more about the connection between social work and athlete sports, advocating, community, and how many times we have to look at the whole person across the lifespan, not just collegiate sports. So thank you for reiterating the fact that from infants to teenagers, adolescents, to adults, being athletes and being active is a very important part of our life. So we thank you for the work that you're doing, and we look forward to look at your research and all the work that you're doing in the various communities around the world. So thank you, and we'll see you in the next video.
Thank you, Steve and Gary. Great time.
Thank you.
Take
care.
Bye.
Talk.